Bodybuilders don't train like athletes, and athletes don't train like bodybuilders. But what are the main differences between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains? If you don't know who I am, my name is Rios. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science, and because I'm here to make fitness great again, I'll be going over the differences of how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains. Before I get started with this video, if you're looking to build an aesthetic physique, be sure to check out my 90-day aesthetic body blueprint. This takes all the guesswork out of achieving your dream physique. But if you're more focused on athletic performance, be sure to check out my 120-day peak athleticism package. Both of these will be in the description. The first difference between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains is that an athlete trains movements while bodybuilders train muscles. While this isn't necessarily science-backed and many exercises actually do overlap, this idea of training movements or training muscles is just a training philosophy, and it affects what exercises are programmed into a person's workout routine. To start with bodybuilders, bodybuilders train muscles. Bodybuilders' workout splits are typically divided into muscle groups, and they select exercises to make sure they hit certain muscles to build an aesthetic physique. Athletes typically do a full body workout split, as it's more specific because sports is a full body encounter, and like I said earlier, they train movements, not muscles. Athletes prioritize training the foundational human movements and make sure that they master these, with these including a push, which can be divided into a horizontal push and a vertical push, a pull, which can also be divided into a horizontal pull and a vertical pull, a squat, a lunge, a hinge, rotation, carries, and many trainers like to include locomotion in this foundational human movement group. And like I said, this training philosophy heavily influences what exercises are programmed into their respective workout routines. For example, when an athlete is doing a bench press, they're focusing on improving their horizontal pushing strength, while a bodybuilder will program a bench press to hit the chest. But unlike athletes, bodybuilders will also include a variety of different exercises to make sure they're hitting specific areas of muscle groups. For example, a bodybuilder will program an incline bench press to hit the upper chest, and do isolation exercises like low to high cable flies to isolate the upper chest. Another example is a bicep curl. Bodybuilders will do a bicep curl to focus more on bicep growth, and maybe add in some hammer curls to build the brachialis and the brachioradialis. But athletes don't train like this. When it comes to the biceps, athletes will hit it, but they don't think of hitting the biceps. They'll just focus on improving their pulling strength. And when it comes to the execution of these exercises, bodybuilders are focused on doing the exercises to build muscle, while athletes are focused on doing the exercises to master movements. While bodybuilders will hit some of the movements that the athletes do, they won't master these movements, as athletes make sure they do a variety so they can master the movement and not the exercise. And like I said, there are many movements that bodybuilders will hit to some degree. There are also many that bodybuilders won't hit. This includes locomotion, which is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you don't ever see bodybuilders sprinting. Carries, which I always add in my bodybuilding routines, but bodybuilders don't do them. And they're very important for building core stability that is crucial for power generation. And they don't hit rotation, which has to be one of the most effective ways that the body is able to generate power. I mean, there's a reason why you don't fight in a square stance and you have one foot in front of the other one. Although bodybuilders train muscles, it's kind of ironic how they're less aesthetic than athletes. When it comes to building a truly aesthetic body, you should aim for a moderate amount of muscle, which bodybuilders have a large amount of muscle, and try and get an athlete body and not a gross bodybuilder body. When it comes to being the best looking version of yourself, having a great body is a huge part. But another part is making sure that you're well groomed, which is why I'm excited to announce that Manscaped is sponsoring today's video. Manscaped is the global men's lifestyle brand that's disrupting the beard market. It's time to throw away that bulky beard trimmer you've been using for years that has dull blades, 10 useless guard attachments, and a bulky power cord. It's time to upgrade to the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and level up your beard game. I'm excited to be one of the first to take a look at the Beard Hedger by Manscaped. The Beard Hedger Pro Kit comes with a ton of amazing products, but the star of the show is the Beard Hedger Trimmer. The powerful 7200 RPM motor and a titanium coated T-blade can cut through the thickest of hair in a single stroke. Whether you prefer a 5 o'clock shadow or a lion's mane, you can choose from 20 different hair cutting lengths with the zoom wheel that uses only one guard. That's right, there's only one guard needed for 20 different hair lengths. You can finally ditch all those useless guard attachments that clutter your bathroom drawers. The beard trimmer is waterproof, cordless, and rechargeable. Manscaped also created dermatologist-tested beard care products to help you grow and nourish a magnificent beard. The Beard Hedger Pro Kit includes the Beard Hedger, beard shampoo, beard conditioner, beard oil, beard balm, travel case, and a free gift of beard accessories, which includes a beard brush, beard comb, and beard scissors. So whether you're starting your beard journey or looking to upgrade from your current routine, Manscaped is here to help you grow a legendary beard. Go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code MartinRios at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping when you use promo code MartinRios at manscaped.com. Join over 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped today. The second difference is that bodybuilders will prioritize isolation exercises while athletes will prioritize compound lifts. Although this is kind of similar to movements over muscles, I still think this is important to discuss, and many of the ideas will just kind of overlap. Bodybuilders prioritize isolation exercises so they can focus on hitting a specific muscle without other muscles or muscle groups interfering. This is why bodybuilders focus on using machines or doing specific weird exercises to make sure they're isolating a particular muscle. And while this does sound logical for building an aesthetic physique, this doesn't teach a bodybuilder's muscles to learn how to work together. This is why whenever you see a bodybuilder outside the gym, they're super stiff. Because they don't know how to freaking move because they're so used to isolating muscles that their muscles aren't able to work together and move effectively. This is why athletes prioritize compound movements, because their muscles learn how to work together so they can generate the most amount of force. Using a muscle in isolation is incredibly unrealistic. In real life or any sports skill, you're not going to just be using one muscle. And that's because the body doesn't work in isolation, it works as a whole. But if you're focused on building muscle, make sure to include both compound lifts and isolation exercises to build an aesthetic physique. The third difference is the mode of cardio that athletes and bodybuilders use. Bodybuilders prioritize low intensity, long duration cardio like walking. This is because it's ideal for fat loss and they can do it more frequently because it doesn't take a large toll on the body. It's like if a bodybuilder chose sprinting as their cardio, they would probably be only able to do it like 2 to 3 times per week, and it would definitely take a toll on their body to where their lifting sessions wouldn't be as effective. Athletes also use this form of cardio in the off-season to build an aerobic base, and it's more emphasized in sports that are primarily aerobic like soccer, but it's also needed in anaerobic sports like MMA because it will improve recovery in between anaerobic bouts. But unlike bodybuilders, coming up to the season, athletes will do interval training that includes sport-specific work with sport-specific work-to-rest ratios that obviously includes some anaerobic work. And obviously skills training also counts as cardio. Overall, bodybuilders do cardio for aesthetic reasons and pretty much only do aerobic conditioning, while athletes do cardio for the actual cardiovascular adaptations and do both anaerobic and aerobic conditioning. The next difference between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains is the training environment. Bodybuilders prioritize machines, seated exercises, and will grab external objects to stabilize themselves, while athletes will prioritize free weights, standing exercises, and will use their own body to stabilize themselves. When it comes to machines versus free weights, bodybuilders will prioritize machines as due to the fixed range of motion, it will allow them to focus more on the target muscle without other muscles interfering. While athletes will prioritize free weights as the stability requirements most closely replicate their sporting environment, which will increase the transferability of their exercises. Bodybuilders will also prioritize seated exercises as this significantly lowers the core demand of exercises so that they can again focus more on the target muscle. While athletes will prioritize standing exercises as they are standing in sports where core stability is needed to prevent unwanted movement or position changes so they can produce the most amount of power possible. And this is the most ridiculous one, but bodybuilders like to grab a bench for chest or back support or grab something like a pole to brace against so that they can use it to help stabilize their body so that they can again focus on hitting the target muscle. While athletes will prioritize exercises where they have to stabilize themselves because in a sport, they can't grab a bench or grab a pole to help them stabilize themselves. In summary, bodybuilders search for an incredibly stable training environment, while athletes train in a moderately stable environment that most closely replicates the environment that they're playing sports in. Many people have a false illusion that the more unstable an exercise is, the better it is for sports, but this is completely false. Exercises like this are typically just done for the camera and they're not effective for sports. This is because instability devices are not recommended for power, hypertrophy, or strength and are typically only used in a rehab setting. And this is because they're not sport specific. I mean, you're not going to be fighting, playing basketball, or playing soccer on a Bosu ball or an exercise ball or any sort of unstable surface. So you shouldn't be training that way. That's why just typical ground-based free weight exercises are the most ideal for athletes. The next difference between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains is the rep tempo. Bodybuilders will focus on time under tension. They're focused on keeping the target muscle under tension and performing reps slowly. And this is because obviously it's just better for muscle growth. While athletes just focus on moving the weight as fast as possible. A great way to think of it is that bodybuilders are focused on moving the weight from point A to point B while recruiting the target muscle as much as possible. While athletes are just focused on moving the weight from point A to point B as fast as possible. And this leads perfectly into the next difference, which is that bodybuilders are strong while athletes are powerful. Strength is the maximal amount of force that you can produce, while power is the amount of force you can produce in the shortest amount of time. And like I said, this leads back into the rep tempo. If you look at how a bodybuilder lifts, they're moving weight, but they're moving it pretty slowly. So they have pretty good low speed strength. Well, if you look at how an athlete performs reps, they do it very fast. So they have very good high speed strength or power. The reason why athletes prioritize power is because sports movements happen too fast to produce maximal force. Look how slow this rep is.
Come on, push.
In a sport, you won't have that much time to produce force. To develop power, athletes resistance train with explosive reps, and many times add chains or bands to help them do this, and add in plyometrics as they're able to continuously accelerate through the top of the movement instead of naturally decelerating towards the top of the movement like you would in typical resistance training exercises. It's like if you're squatting, you're naturally going to decelerate at the top of the squat. Well, in a plyometric, you'll continue accelerating through the top of the movement, which is why if you do a lower body plyometric, you'll end up jumping in the air. The next difference between how an athlete and a bodybuilder trains is the difference between how they train their core. And this goes back to training movements and training muscles. Athletes train muscles. They're focused on building their ab muscles and typically divide it into the upper abs, lower abs, and obliques. While athletes will focus on working on the foundational trunk movements, which include trunk flexion, trunk extension, trunk lateral flexion, and trunk rotation. Athletes will also do dynamic and static ab exercises, while bodybuilders pretty much only do dynamic ab exercises. This is because dynamic ab exercises are probably better for hypertrophy of the abs. Athletes will do both dynamic and static ab exercises because this will optimally develop the core. And this is because the primary function of the core is to stabilize the body. So overall, when it comes to core work, bodybuilders train muscles. They're focused on building the six-pack and the obliques, while athletes train movements and focus on training trunk extension, trunk flexion, trunk lateral flexion, trunk rotation, and anti-extension, anti-flexion, anti-lateral flexion, and anti-rotation. So athletes do the combo of actually doing the movements and also preventing the movement. The next difference between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains is that an athlete does functional range of motion, while a bodybuilder will try and go through a full range of motion and many times go through an excessive range of motion. Recent research points to the conclusion that muscles grow better in long lengths. I've made multiple videos where I go in depth on this, but basically bodybuilders heard this and took range of motion to the extreme. Nowadays you see bodybuilders going super deep on their squats and even getting crazy deep stretches on other exercises. Athletes won't do exercises in these extreme range of motion, but they'll do exercises in a functional range of motion. Functional range of motion is just range of motion required for a function. The easiest example to use is a squat. When is an athlete going to be in a full depth squat position when doing sports? Never. When an athlete is running or they're jumping, they're not jumping from a super deep position. There's no need for athletes to train in these crazy ranges of motion because they don't need it. This is why you'll rarely see an athlete doing full depth squats and will most likely see them doing parallel or half squats. And the last difference between how an athlete trains and how a bodybuilder trains is workout intensity. Athletes prioritize skills training while bodybuilders have the gym is life bro mentality. Bodybuilders try and train as hard as possible so that they can fatigue their muscles and cause muscle hypertrophy. But athletes don't do this. Athletes' number one priority is their skills training. And their strength and conditioning sessions shouldn't interfere with that. Athletes don't want to be excessively sore from their strength training to where it affects their performance in their skills training. I've experienced this a number of times. I've done an intense bodybuilding workout and then I go and train MMA and I'm super sore, so I'm not able to get the most out of that. Athletes resistance train to supplement their skills training, while for bodybuilders, resistance training is the priority. And that's how an athlete trains versus how a bodybuilder trains. If you want to build an attractive body, I actually made a video going over the most attractive muscles to women and how to build them.